Eleanor of Provence, the French queen of Henry III, popularity had sunk to an all-time low. After she had demanded to receive Queen Gold from the citizens of London. But this was on the start of problems and upheaval in the life of the English Queen. In the final part of this documentary we look at the events of Eleanor's family life through the Second Barons' War, and after the death of her husband, Henry III. In 1264 the Second Barons' War would break out in England. The Barons' revolt would be led by the king's nemesis, Simon de Montfort. England would become too dangerous for Eleanor and she would leave the country into exile and form a royalist court from the safety of France. Whilst in her exile, Eleanor would spend her time raising French forces to support her husband against the rebels. But tragedy would strike to the royalists when the fleet carrying French forces to England to support Henry III would be sunk in a storm before it could leave Sluis in Flanders. Further disaster would hit the royalist cause in England, when both Eleanor's husband and her eldest son Edward would be captured by Simon de Montfort at the Battle of Sluis, in East Sussex on the Wednesday 14 May 1264. With Henry a prisoner, he was forced to sign the Mise of Sluis, which effectively gave Simon de Montfort the position of overall power of the kingdom. Montfort would also keep Edward as prisoner under close surveillance to ensure the royalist would keep to the agreement. Edward though would escape from de Montfort's imprisonment at Hereford. Edward would then go on to slay Simon de Montfort and defeat his army at the Battle of Evesham on the Tuesday 4 August 1265. Following the Battle of Evesham in 1266 Edward and Henry would go on to defeat de Montfort's son, Simon de Montfort the Younger at the siege of Kenilworth Castle, and bring about the end of the Second Barons' War as the last of the rebels would surrender. After the Battle of Evesham, with the Barons' War safely in the control of the royalists, Eleanor would return to France. With the Baron War now past, Eleanor would see the birth of her grandson, Henry, son of her son, Prince Edward on the Sunday 6 May 1268. Henry would naturally become second in line to the throne. In 1269, Eleanor's youngest son, Edmund, who had taken residence at Kenilworth Castle following the Barons' War, would marry in 1269 Aveline de Forts, who came from a noble family in the north of England. Following the marriage of Eleanor's youngest son, she would then be hit with a series of tragedies. Starting with the death of her husband, Henry III, on Wednesday 16 November 1272 following a stroke. By his death, he would have reigned for 56 years. A record that would hold until the death of George III around 550 years later in 1820. After the death of her husband, Eleanor would spend most of her time raising her grandson Henry, until Henry grew sick and would pass away from natural causes on Saturday 14 October 1274. Henry's death would hit Eleanor hard and she would go into mourning and demand that Henry's heart would be buried at Guildford Cathedral. Following the death of her husband and her grandson, her youngest son's wife, Aveline, at the age of 15 years old on Saturday 12 November 1274. It has been widely believed that she died from childbirth, which was very dangerous at this time. A few years later her eldest daughter, Margaret, Queen of Scots, would pass away on Tuesday 26 February 1275 at the age of 34 at Cooper Castle in Fife, Scotland. Then a month later, Eleanor's other daughter, Beatrice would die on Sunday 24 March 1275. Happier news would bless Eleanor's life later that year, when her youngest son, Edmund, would marry again to Blanche of Artois, who was a Queen of Navarre until the death of her husband 2 years previously. Eleanor though would be relieved to see an heir born to the throne again, when on Tuesday 12 April 1284, when Eleanor of Castile would give birth to Prince Edward, latterly, Edward II. To give her son, Edward I the much-needed male heir, would give birth to Prince Edward, latterly, Edward II. With the Plantagenet kingdom secure, Eleanor would head into retirement at Amesbury Priory in 1286 at the age of around 63, which was considered a very great age at the time. Here she would join two of her granddaughters who were already nuns at the priory. Mary of Woodstock, a daughter of her eldest son, Edward, and Eleanor of Brittany, a daughter of her youngest daughter, Beatrice. Eleanor would pass away, most likely from natural causes, between the 24th and 25th June 1291 at the age of about 68. Although she was buried in Amesbury Priory, the exact position of her grave was never recorded by the nuns there, thus making her the only Queen of England to be buried without a marked grave, although her heart was taken to be buried at a Franciscan priory of Greyfriars.